House Democrats facing new pressure to hold a full floor vote on their impeachment inquiry, and it's coming from Democrats. Not the White House, not the GOP alone, but Democrats. A small group of them, including California Representative John Garamendi, are calling on Speaker Pelosi to hold that full vote to take away Republicans' complaint that this is an illegitimate process, despite Pelosi saying a vote is not necessary.
I do think that it's time for us to put a vote on the floor, a resolution for the inquiry, structured in such a way that it can move forward with full power of the Congress behind it. I think that's probably going to come in the next week or so.
Additionally, Senator Lindsey Graham says he's sending a letter to Speaker Pelosi warning that Senate Republicans will not impeach President Trump over his call with Ukraine. Meanwhile, new reaction on reporting the first whistleblower has professional ties to one of the 2020 Democratic candidates. His attorney, Mark Zaid, denying any bias, saying his client has spent his entire career working in the executive branch and has had contact with people on both sides of the political aisle who went on to run for president. I want to bring in now Ari Fleischer, former White House press secretary under President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. Good to see you, Ari. All right, let's break that down a bit. We can start, I suppose, because there's a lot to chew on. We can start with this idea of a push now among some Democrats for a full House vote.
Well, it's appropriate. It's appropriate because if you're going to proceed with impeachment, our Constitution's gravest power that Congress has to wield over the president, it must be fair. The American people, even if they don't like somebody in office, are fair-minded people, and they understand the House can do whatever it wants by majority will, but they won't accept it if it does not have a fair process to it. And I think there are strong arguments to be made that it should be kicked off with a proper vote of the full House, ideally one that shows bipartisanship. If it's not, partisan impeachments never work.
Well, it's interesting because that would mean a shift for Democrats if they, vote to do this, if they'd hold that full vote. And I'm curious to know what's getting them to move off that line. I'm a big fan of fairness, but when you mix in politics, sometimes that's not always the impetus.
Yeah. And when you mix in muscle, and they have the muscle so they can do it their way, and you put that on top of hatred for Trump, it all adds up.
So how do you account for it?
Look, I think the reason they're not doing it is they know it would be a partisan vote, and they don't want to expose it just as a partisan impeachment.
Interesting.
The reason they would do it is because the arguments about fairness are starting to add up, and they recognize the American people, if there's going to be an impeachment process, it needs to be a fair one.
And now we'll see if Nancy Pelosi actually has the votes for impeachment inquiry. Senator Lindsey Graham, big voice in the